It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160. Our conversation with Brad Ricca is brought to you by Marcus and Mack, a law firm representing injured people. And Brad is the author of the book Olive the Lionheart, Lost Love, Imperial Spies, and One Woman's Journey into the Heart of Africa. Boy, Brad, that seems like an awful lot to tackle, but you did it. Wonderful job on the book.
Oh, thanks, Todd. Thanks so much.
Olive McLeod, introduce us to this amazing lady.
So the year most of this takes place is 1910, actually, in England for the beginning part. And she's kind of a socialite. She's Scottish. She has some money, living in London with her parents. She's 30 years old, which, is a little more relatively older at that time, not married, and she was known for her red hair, which was really long, and she had a great sense of humor, and she liked to party. Back then that meant lavish dinner parties and dancing till dawn with her friends. But she seemed to have this really nice life. And then she met this guy. His name was Boyd Alexander, and he was an ex-soldier and was a naturalist now, and he would go on expeditions to Africa. And she met him, and they had a very brief whirlwind romance. And he said, "I have this next expedition scheduled for Africa. I have to go." So he went, and he disappeared. And she does. That's the moment where she does the extraordinary thing and says, "I'm going to follow him. I'm going to find out what happened."
Mm-hmm. And she does so because of, as you include a newspaper item about it, the report that he has been murdered. She doesn't necessarily believe that right at the start, does she?
Right, and there's this report that he was murdered by natives, and there's not a lot of detail to it. And, part of her, I think, just doesn't want to believe it. But like you said, there's something strong within her that doesn't believe it. She kind of feels him pulling at her from Africa, and she says this in her diaries, that she feels compelled almost to go and find out for herself.
All right, so you mentioned it. I think it's as good a time as any to bring it up. Olive's diaries sat for 100 years or so, and just gathered dust. And finally, what did you do? You found out about them and pursued them. How was it that you came across this story of Olive McLeod and her amazing diaries?
I mean, a lot of it was luck, and I think it's sort of things falling into place. And as strange as it sounds, I think some of it is them finding me. So I had pretty much written most of the book without them. And I was just doing, last-minute cleanup and research, and I found this entry in this old, Scottish library database that there were diaries of hers, and that they were in a castle on the Isle of Skye in Scotland, and you can't make this up. So I thought, well, I need to see these. So I wrote the person that takes care of them, and he said, well, you can come and see them anytime. And I mapped it out. There were there was a flight, obviously, and 15 different trains and a couple of boats. And then we found out that we were having a third kid on the way. So I said, well, it might not be the best time to go to Scotland. So that adventure was dashed. But he was great. He said, I'll copy this stuff for you. I'll send it to you. And it seemed like no one had touched it in 100 years, and it was just this weird thing to, wake up early in the morning when the timelines would kind of agree, and he would be sending me these scans of her time in Africa. And it really changed a lot of the story, because I had her version of the adventures she goes through in Africa. But what the diaries gave was what was going on in her own head and in her own mind. Yeah. And a lot of times it was very different from what she was experiencing on the ground.
Much of it is absolutely heartbreaking. There's so many layers to this story. Talk about the engagement to Boyd Alexander itself. She actually turned him down, didn't she?
Yeah. So once he disappears and is reported dead, the newspapers say, well, the grieving fiance Olive MacLeod is mourning him, and then she's going to go to Africa, and she's so brave. But what we find out kind of early in the book is that he did ask her to marry him before he left, but she said no. And so again, you have the story that everyone kind of knows, and this is through the press and her family, that they were engaged, they were going to be married and live together forever and happy and all that. But that wasn't the case. There was the hidden story that she had turned him down because she had another suitor at the time, we find out. So that this is just another added layer to the story, that she feels incredibly guilty that she didn't say yes and that now he's gone.
It is just an amazing magnetism between the two of them. And you make the point through the course of the book about how it was almost as if they were closer now that he was no longer in this world than had he remained as a part of the world. And had he not died, their closeness might not ever have developed as it was. Tell me about the journeys themselves. On the African continent, here's this most unlikely of African explorers, Olive MacLeod, with the Talbots, Mr. and Mrs. Talbot. They're a very, very important and intriguing part of this whole story.
Yeah, so she decides she wants to go to Africa, and her father immediately says, absolutely not. And she finally convinces him, and part of it is she finds this couple named the Talbots, and they're experienced explorers, and they agree to take her. And so her father relents, as I think fathers often do, and he agrees to pay for it, and they go. And someone remarked to me just last week, they were reading it, and they said, well, this is almost like a comedy with these three going across Africa. I mean, it's not, because their lives are almost constantly in danger, but it's amazing the things they go through. I mean, there's the wildlife, there's snakes, she goes on a lion hunt, and the lion's kind of right in front of her, and she finds out that her bullets are gone. She learns to shoot a rifle when she's over there to protect herself. There's the hippos, who are incredibly dangerous, believe it or not. Yeah. They get poisoned by a native chief at one point, and then there's a cannibal cult that comes after them. So it stretches the boundaries of I think imagination, but it's all true. They went through it. It's kind of a greatest hits of African adventures, and it's really amazing.
And there's a mystery element to this that is really intriguing and develops as the story goes along. More questions seem to come to light. There's Alice's secret plan for once she has accepted that Boyd has been killed, what she intends to do. There's the question that develops, why was Boyd really doing this? What are the Talbots really doing this for? All of these come to light, and I can just imagine you looking at those diaries and your eyes popping out of your head from time to time as you saw this story developing before you.
Yeah, and I think that's all these things, like you said, come out of, she just kind of goes to, find out what happened and satisfy herself and her own guilt. But it turns out she knows nothing about any of these people. I think your comment earlier that she gets closer to Boyd as she goes there and as he, retreats more into the distance is really true. And I think that happens in our own lives all the time. But there's a murder mystery of what happened to him, and there's the mystery of why he was there in the first place. And are the Talbots just the kindly couple to help her? And that doesn't seem the case. But like you alluded to, the real mystery was, why does she go there? this is a really big deal for a single woman in 1910 to go to Africa and go on a 3,000-mile trek. And when I read why in the diaries, I don't want to spoil it, like you said, my eyes popped out of my head, and it made perfect, heartbreaking sense. And it gives her story, I think, something even more powerful than just adventuring through Africa.
Yeah, we meet some amazing people. Mastaba is so noble in the way that he helps them. Jose Lopez is a shady character who Boyd completely trusted, and even her little baby lions, the little Zakis, they are a great part of the story as well. And you have done such a wonderful job with this book. All of the Lionheart. Brad Ricca, our guest here this morning on Indiana in the Morning. So harder and harder to get books these days, to just walk into a bookstore and find them. How are we going to get our hands on this one, Brad?
Well, I mean, you're right, unfortunately. I think anywhere you feel safe, if your local bookstore is open and doing curbside delivery, or, all the big internet places have it right now.
St. Martin's Press, Brad Ricca has been with us here this morning. Folks want to learn more about you or about your book, what you're working on. What are the resources for us?
They can look at, we have a website, allofthelionheart.com, and we'll be putting different stuff up there. We've got some maps and other things.
Beautiful, beautiful. Brad, thanks so much for spending some time with us today. It's been great, and the book is a wonderful, wonderful read. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much, Todd. I really appreciate it.